Why Doc Holliday was more dangerous than Billy the Kid. Two names stand out in Old West history, but for very different reasons. Billy the Kid became famous through headlines and myths that turned him into a symbol of reckless youth. Doc Holliday earned his reputation in the eyes of men who fought beside him and against him. One lived fast and died young. The other carried a calm acceptance of death that made him far more dangerous. Number 1. Reputation versus reality. Billy the Kid sits high in Old West myth because newspapers and dime novels loved a wild headline, not because he was the deadliest gun in the territory. The famous line that he killed 21 men one for each year of his life comes from sensational retellings, not court records or reliable witnesses. When you strip the press away, his confirmed violence shrinks, and most of it clusters in the Lincoln County War. A messy business feud that spiraled into ambushes, raids, and hurried gunplay. He could be quick, and he was brave in the way a cornered young man is brave, but his shootings often came out of chaos rather than disciplined marksmanship. Even his most dramatic moment, the 1881 jailbreak in Lincoln, shows nerve and luck more than mastery. He seized an opening, shot 2 deputies, and fled into the night. That made him notorious, but notoriety isn't the same as a sustained reputation among professional gunmen. Around actual lawmen, cowboys, and hired hands who lived with violence, Billy was seen as dangerous because he was impulsive, because he would run, because he might shoot to escape traits that inspire caution, not deep respect. Doc Holliday's reputation formed in a different furnace. He was educated, trained as a dentist, then driven west by tuberculosis, and that diagnosis changed how he moved through the world. He lived like a man already negotiating with death, and that calm under pressure showed up at saloon tables and in the street. He practiced until his draw was smooth and his aim steady, and he was known to carry a knife when the range got short. His danger wasn't rumor. It was the steady way he escalated only when he chose to, then finished what he started. In towns that mattered, Dodge, Deadwood, Tombstone, his name worked like a warning. Men didn't trade body count stories. They said, "Don't push him." The alliance with Wyatt Earp reinforced that message because standing shoulder to shoulder with respected lawmen meant his violence had context and purpose. At the OK Corral, he advanced with a shotgun and kept his head while bullets snapped the air, the kind of composure that veteran fighters notice and remember. So, the contrast is clean. Billy's legend is a media balloon tied to a short, frantic career. Doc's standing is the quiet consensus of peers who watched him act without panic. One reads like a headline. The other feels like a verdict from people who were there. Number 2. The making of Doc Holliday. John Henry Holliday started in Georgia in a respectable home, and because of his background, people didn't immediately see the outlaw in him. He studied hard and earned a degree in dentistry from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery. But early in his career, tuberculosis struck, a disease that had already taken his mother. Faced with a grim medical prognosis, he moved west. People believed that dry air might ease his lungs. In the frontier lands, dentistry alone couldn't support him. His health cut into it, and patients were uneasy with someone coughing. So gambling became his main livelihood. As he traveled through Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, he merged his new identity: gambler, occasional gunfighter, man of few allies. He didn't throw himself into violent conflict from day one. He tested edges. He learned to draw and shoot, practicing until he could move fast and with precision. His skill wasn't natural luck alone, he trained. He also carried a knife for close fights, a backup where gun range failed. That dual weapon skill made him more dangerous in tight quarters. His sickness added a psychological weight. Every round of coughing reminded him time was short, and he internalized a fierceness tied to mortality. In confrontations, he moved like someone who already accepted death. That gave him composure most hotheads lack. When others hesitated, he acted. He didn't waste threats. If crossed, he escalated swiftly. Over time, stories attached to him. In Dallas, an early pistol duel after a dispute. In Fort Griffin and Dodge City, conflicts over gambling tables and debts. In Las Vegas, New Mexico, a man named Mike Gordon was shot after a confrontation. Through those episodes, he built a reputation beyond the dentist-turned-gambler narrative. His name carried warning. Unlike many who stumbled into violence, Holliday shaped his persona. Educated, deadly, composed, leveraged by illness, and backed by practiced skill. That mix made him more calculated, and thus more threatening than someone simply driven by chaos. Number 3. Connections and loyalty. Billy the Kid never managed to build a strong circle that would stand by him when times turned hard. In New Mexico, he was involved with the regulators during the Lincoln County War, and for a short time, that gave him structure. But those alliances were temporary, and based on a shared fight, rather than loyalty to him personally. Once the conflict cooled, men shifted sides, cut deals, or simply disappeared. Billy was left exposed, forced to rely on his own speed and daring. Even those who called themselves his friends often betrayed him under pressure. When Pat Garrett finally tracked him down in 1881, there was no group of armed riders prepared to defend him. His story ended with him isolated in a darkened room, a victim of his lack of lasting ties. Doc Holliday's situation was entirely different. From the moment he met Wyatt Earp in Texas in the late 1870s, he found an ally who would change his standing in the West. Wyatt valued courage, steadiness, and reliability, and Holliday had those traits in abundance. Their friendship was tested repeatedly, from Dodge City saloons to the deadly streets of Tombstone. At the OK Corral, Holliday walked into the fight with the Earp brothers, not as a hired gun, but as a trusted partner. His loyalty to Wyatt was so strong that witnesses later remarked he seemed willing to die alongside him. That level of commitment created a partnership that magnified his danger, because Doc was no longer just one gambler with a pistol. He was part of a unit that commanded both respect and fear. Beyond Wyatt, Holliday cultivated ties with gamblers, saloon owners, and lawmen across the frontier. He built a reputation as someone who could be counted on when violence broke out. This gave him influence far beyond his personal skill with a gun. In Dodge City, his presence added weight to Wyatt's efforts to maintain control. In Tombstone, his name struck caution in rivals, because they knew the Earps stood behind him. That web of connections gave him a kind of authority Billy the Kid never possessed. The key difference is that Billy's fame was built on stories told in newspapers, but when trouble came, there was no one left to defend him. Doc's reputation was built on trust, earned in real confrontations, and his loyalty bought him allies who returned that loyalty. In the violent world of the Old West, having skilled friends was as deadly as having a fast draw. Doc Holliday combined both, which made him far more dangerous than a young outlaw, drifting from one doomed gang to another. Number 4. Fearlessness of death. Billy the Kid lived every day like he had something to lose. His escapes, his gunfights, his constant moving were all driven by that instinct to survive. He dodged arrests, ran from lawmen, and lashed out wildly when trapped. His danger lay in that unpredictable desperation, but that also meant he feared capture or a bullet catching him unawares. Doc Holliday wasn't dancing with danger because he hoped to see another sunrise. He was flirting with it because he believed his days were already numbered. Tuberculosis ravaged him, and from early on, he knew the odds were stacked against him. He didn't try to deny that fact, he leaned into it. In confrontations, that gave him a rare kind of calm. While others weighed consequences, he acted because the worst had already been decided. Witnesses often spoke of his eerie composure under fire. He didn't flinch. He didn't stammer. He didn't waste time sizing up options. He drew, aimed, and struck, sometimes even after suffering wounds, because pain or threat didn't faze him. That steadiness meant his adversaries felt their own fear magnified. They couldn't scare him off. Where Billy might fire in panic or retreat, Doc stayed rooted and fought with cold clarity. In life, he faced death daily through his illness. In every duel or conflict, that acceptance became a weapon. Other men trembled, wondered, hesitated, but Doc moved with purpose. His heart may have been failing, but his resolve never paused. That is the kind of fearlessness that makes a man more dangerous than bullets alone. Number 5. Lasting legacy of respect. Billy the Kid's story turned into legend because of his youth and the way papers painted him. A tragic outlaw, heroic in his wildness. But few serious fighters of his era looked to him with the kind of respect a peer commands. His myth grew after death, his name echoed on posters and in dime novels, but for many contemporaries, he remained a brash kid who slipped away rather than fought fair. Doc Holliday's legacy carries a different weight. From lawmen to gamblers to old gunslingers, people spoke of him not just as daring, but as someone whose reputation commanded silence and caution. Wyatt Earp, a hardened lawman known for judging characters, called Holliday a loyal friend and often reserved praise. Stories traveled in saloons. Men claimed he faced threats without shaking, walked into ambushes confident, and answered provocations without hesitation. Even those who disliked him admitted his skill, his nerve, and his capacity to kill without drama. Decades after his death, his name remains among the handful of figures whose legend is carried by respect, not simply by sensational stories. His role at the OK Corral, his vendetta ride with Earp, his presence in frontier towns, all those episodes built memory among people who lived through the West's violence, not just read about it. When Doc stepped into a room, gamblers steadied their bets, gunslingers measured their words, lawmen watched angles. His illness, his calm, his willingness to die for principle, those things deepened the respect. His reputation didn't fade into romantic myth only. It stayed rooted in those who knew what danger looked like. In contrast, Billy's respect was shallow and fleeting, honored in legend, but rarely in hard conversation. That durability of respect is why Doc Holliday remains more dangerous in memory than most young outlaws whose body counts outlived their impact.